everybody. I'm Ron Beckner. I'm a financial advisor at Peaks Integrity Wealth Management, Raymond James. I do have an office in Westcliff, but I used to have an office with another firm down here in Pueblo on the south side. My folks are actually from the south side. They grew up and graduated as Colts, so that was way back when. Anyway, just to give you a little history on me, I am currently a financial advisor going into my 9th year, but I am also a 3rd generation pipe fitter welder, and I'm retired military. So I am a working class American, and I work and specialize with working class Americans because I understand what everybody does to make a living. I look at money as a tool. I look at it differently, and I help people understand, because we're all individuals, how to hopefully make it work to the best of its ability for who you are and what your needs are. We also have Miss Trish McKenzie with us. She is an agent on the Financial Star. She's going to be the person that's going to basically talk about the protection point. And then we also have Alicia Coltrip, an attorney. One of the things that we like to do is teach people what the wealthy and ultra wealthy have been doing, and that is surrounding themselves with good team members, i.e. a good tax professional. On Tuesday we had the tax professional here. I'm sorry to say she could not make it today, but we do have a couple of pretty good examples that she brought to light on why it's a good thing to maybe consider doing that. But we also like the idea of having a protection specialist, which is the insurance side, and also an attorney to understand the legal things that we need to have in place. And I'm going to let Alicia, I don't want to steal her thunder, but I want her to really have a lot more opportunity today than I gave her on Tuesday, because Tuesday we focused on the tax side. Today we're going to be focusing on the legal side. With that being said, I did write a book. It's called A Blueprint and Financial Guide for the Working Class American. It is available on Amazon, and it's also available on Audible. I'm the kind of guy that I don't have a lot of time to read books, but I listen to them. In fact, I'm on my 9th book so far this year, just listening, because I get a lot of windshield time since I live in Westcliff. Anyway, please keep that in mind. But what I would like to do is start out and talk about our time formula. So I'm going to go back to my dad. He taught me on my very first leadership job that if you give a person time, they can do any job in the world. But time is an acronym. It stands for tools, information, material, and equipment. If you're missing any one of those 4 elements, you cannot do the job. And I've actually kind of instilled that into this trade. And the tools are the education that I have to take continually. First, what I had to take to even sit in the chair, but then the continuing education that has to happen every single year just to stay up to snuff and to speed with everything that's going on in this country. The information is the companies that I work with, the product partners, the professionals that I work with, because I can't give legal advice, but I can talk to a legal professional who can give legal advice, and that's going to be part of the team. I can't give tax advice. I have to know the legal stuff, I have to know the tax stuff, but I can't give advice on it, and that's why I want people that are around me that understand if you build a team around you, you're going to have those professionals giving you the best guidance, because remember, they've got to take continuing education as well to stay up on what's going on, staying current with laws, everything that's happening in this country. So it's very important that we understand that. Now, material is money. Money's just a tool, and that's what I'm trying to teach people. How to use that tool. We all know how to make it, we all know how to spend it, but I'm trying to get people's head around how we can use it, just a little bit of it, for the best of its ability for our personal needs. And the equipment is my office, my computer, my telephone, even my vehicle, because I have been known to jump in it and sit at your kitchen table. Now, I added an R to time because time is real. I notice the older we get, the faster the clock seems to go. And it only goes one way. So the younger you start, the better off you're going to be. And I'm looking at the young people. Us older people, we're kind of behind the 8 ball, or we've been led a couple of different directions that we were not comfortable with. So that's why I like letting people understand that our time is something that I feel very strongly about, and I even trademarked it. But the form in formula stands for family. I want to understand your personal situation, whether you're married, divorced, you have children, you have parents, you have siblings. What is that whole situation for you? For me, we've got my wife's mom and dad, and, well, actually the dad just passed away. I keep wanting to include him. But we've got the mom, the uncle, and aunt who are all in their 90s living with us. So we are living in a day and age where, elderly people do need taken care of because they never really got the education on how to have their money working for them for when they couldn't work any longer. But they're still alive. That's what I really like people to understand is preparing for that future. O is for occupation. What do you do for a living? What did you do for a living? The next one is recreation. What do you do for fun? All work and no play make us dull people. And then the last thing is money. But once again, money is just a tool, folks, and we want to go into that. So the second point of the star is all about budget, income, spending, and taxes. Now, if anybody's worked with a budget, and on the back side of those star sheets, you'll find a budget worksheet. If you're working someplace where you're having to deal with their outflows or their inflows or something like that, you'll notice that you'll have to work on a budget for that business. And if you go over budget, you usually kind of get in trouble because the business can't afford to do what you've overspent for. And it's the same thing with us as individuals. The problem that we run into more often than not is we get these little plastic things called a credit card, and it's okay because we're going to overspend. And then we can actually make the minimum payment and still kind of survive, but at some point the credit card company says, sorry, that's your limit. You've only been paying the minimum and we won't allow you to have any more. Yet we've got a governmental system today that wants to raise the debt ceiling. They're spending money like a teenager with a credit card that has no limit, and now they're getting ready to say, hey, we're going to keep paying that minimum, but we need you to raise that limit. Do you guys have a credit card company that would allow you to do that? I don't. I don't know any financial institution that would do that in their right minds. Yet we've got a governmental system and people that we've elected into it that continue to do it. And it's just kicking the can down the road. And I'm sorry, you youthful folks, you're going to be the ones holding the bag. And it's something that I'm trying to get people prepared for. Please think about a budget. Think about paying yourself. Think about taking care of your bills and taking just a little bit of money and putting it away in a place that you're comfortable with, that you feel good about it doing its job. Money's just a tool. It needs to work just as hard for you as you've worked for it. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about what's going on. I want to show you folks the U.S. debt clock. Has anybody ever seen this before? Yes. It's kind of a hard number to look at, but this 31.8 trillion right there is exactly what they want to raise the debt ceiling on, because we're already in trouble. When you start looking at debt per citizen, it's over 94,000. It's 248,000 just for us legal taxpayers. What's funny is when I look at that, I think, wow, that is a stupid number. But that's not the number that scares me. The number that scares me, they hide. It's all the way down here in the bottom, lower right-hand corner. And it's called the unfunded liability. It's this number right here, folks. 187.8 trillion. When you look at that, unfunded liability includes Medicare and Social Security. How many here have paid into the FICA, that FICA? Anybody? If you've ever gotten a paycheck, you paid into it. 6.2% is what you pay into it. The employer pays in 6.2%. So 12.4% of your paycheck goes in to funding this. Yet it's an unfunded liability. Now people are baffled at how that can happen. I'm baffled at how that can happen. The lawmakers in Washington are baffled how they could allow it to happen, yet they did. And that's what I'm trying to prepare people for. Does anybody know what the highest tax rate in this country? Actually, I'm going to back up the bus just for a second. Boop, boop, boop. What is the highest tax rate right now?
Where?
Anybody? I'm sorry?
Where?
With our income in the United States of America for tax rates, what is the highest tax rate today?
I don't know.
It's 37%. 37%. The lowest tax rate is 10. We actually have a 0 if you can get into the 0. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. But in 1944, the highest tax rate was 94%. 94%. It's when Ronald Reagan was making movies. He made $100,000 a picture. He would only make 2 pictures a year because if he made that third picture, $94,000 was going to Uncle Sam. California got the other 6. Now, it's my opinion. I believe that's probably what drove that man into politics because he had to live through that. But then I got to thinking, wait a minute, man, $200,000 in 1944, what is that, $3.8 million a year income today? That's not us. That's not a working class American's wage. So then my question became, okay, then at that time, what was the lowest tax rate? It was 23%. And you had to make less than $2,000 for the entire year to be in that bracket. So the average working class American was paying between 40 and 47% tax just on their income alone. Now, why did we have such a high tax rate at that time? We just came out of World War II. The country was in massive debt. And the only way to get out of it was off of the backs of the working class American. And we did. We got us out of it. But we still had people in Washington that weren't doing everything correctly. I mean, we can sit there and look at a lot of different presidentials or presidents and or administrations. I mean, we can go back to Nixon in 1971 when he took us off the gold standard. And that totally changed things. Well, why did he do that? Because Japan and Germany was sending so many cars over and they wanted payment in gold. They didn't want the American dollar. And instead of leaving us on the gold standard, making America more competitive and have us start using our ingenuity, took us off the gold standard and said, you'll take our dollars, and that's kind of how things went. It's been a different story from there, but that's a different story. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is we have to be prepared to start thinking about this. If anybody's counting on Medicare and Social Security, I think it's going to be there. But my prediction is, it doesn't matter if you're already taking it or we're going to be taking it, expect about a 25% pay cut. Now, I'm going to go back out of this. Does anybody have any questions on this silly thing?
It's really not silly. It's frightening.
It is frightening. It is, in its own way, it really is. What I'd like to do now is just kind of share a quick movie trailer. It's called The Power of Zero.
My favorite one. It is.
The truth is, the federal government has lost control of the budget.
Instead of paying for all the new initiatives, whether they're tax cuts, spending increases, all sorts of things that we like, the government's just putting it all on the national credit card. And as a result, our national debt is just going up and up and up. and it's growing faster than the economy, and that's when you know you have a real problem.
Everything is gonna be squeezed out of the budget. There won't be anything left.
The road we are on is a perilous one that ultimately leads to the bankrupting of our country.
So we have a crisis on our hands.
All Congress has to do for this whole situation to come to a head is nothing. Because every year that they do nothing makes the problem even more unsolvable.
We don't seem to have the ability to get along and find common ground.
Is the government trying to trick you right now? And the answer is very simply yes.
So why is this being swept under the rug? Why is nobody talking about this? Probably because it's not popular.
So I've actually been traveling around the country for about 4 years now, taking the Power of Zero message to different groups.
When you cut taxes on current generations, you are simultaneously raising them on future generations.
It is all driven by spending. Once we have spent a dollar, we've already decided to tax it. The only question is whether we tax it now or we borrow it now and tax it in the future.
So to make up for the liabilities that we're incurring with all the promises we've made in social insurance programs, we're gonna have to increase substantially the tax rate and perhaps even double it.
Now precisely how high it's gonna be, there's a lot of room to debate. People will have to pay more taxes.
People's retirement savings are at risk of future higher taxes.
Well, qualified plans really do two things. They defer the tax and the tax calculation. Now let that run past your brain real slow.
I'm driven by trying to help as many people as I can avoid this disaster that's going to come up in retirement when taxes go up, when the market goes down. What are these people going to do if they haven't planned ahead of time?
This film came out 5 years ago, and the national debt at that time was at 20 trillion. So, in 5 years, it's gone up to where it is, and you saw the number, as somebody said, that's frightening. And it is frightening. And then we sit there and we listen to the politicians, and nobody brings this to light. And that's why I wrote my book. David McKnight is one of my heroes. And I don't know if you saw, the very first gentleman on there was David Walker. He was the Comptroller General, which means he was the CPA for this country during the Clinton administration, the Bush administrations. He quit on Obama because he kept telling every single one of them, we've got to increase taxes. The numbers aren't going to work. We've got to do something. And they were like, hey, Dave, take it easy. We just got in power. We're not about to just give it up by raising taxes on everybody. People in the elected arena don't want to be the person handing the bag or holding the bag when this gets handed to the American working class. They're not going to want it. They're gonna kick the can down the road. I'll guarantee you they're gonna raise the debt ceiling again. Guarantee it. Because they don't want it to happen on their watch where the country went into default. So they're gonna do whatever they gotta do. So next, I want to talk about, I call this my spending star. Because if you think about it, we all do this particular thing. First and foremost, when we buy anything, and I don't care what it is, we can even talk about Angelo's Pizza. I did my fundamental analysis. Man, pizza's easy, and I really like Angelo's. It's good pizza. And then I did my technical analysis. Okay, well, people usually like margarita pizza, and they usually like pepperoni pizza. And then I got another one with some extra cheese. It's got some peppers and onions and stuff. So then I did my technical analysis. And what I was doing was trying to figure out what might work best for the majority of people. Now, if you're, gluten sensitive or something like that, no, I didn't get the gluten-free, but I did get a salad. So at least that's gluten-free. But I did my fundamental analysis, my technical analysis, and what we're trying to figure out is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and trends of the purchase. If you buy a car, you don't just walk into the dealer knowing you want a Toyota, throw your money on the table and say, pull one around. No, you've done your fundamental analysis, you know what brand you want, but now you're gonna do the technical analysis. Well, I want a pickup, or I want a sedan, or I want a hatchback. And then you're gonna test drive it. And once you're happy with that, then you go into what I call using the head, or the top point of the star. What is the risk of getting this? Well, let's see. It's gonna be a newer car, so I'm gonna have a higher insurance rate. Am I gonna be able to afford the payments? What is good? I mean, you just go through the whole process. And then the bottom line is, what do I get out of that purchase? We do this with everything. And I want people to start realizing it. It's an unconscious effort of doing this, but I want people aware that we do this. I don't care if we're buying gum, pizza, a house. This is how it works, folks. And trying to get your head around how things work is going to be the key. So, Sandy's not here, and that was our tax professional. But she brought up some really good things. Again, we're going to talk about simple tax preparation. I'm not giving tax advice here. I'm just kind of pointing out what she had going on. So when she looks at a married couple, they're in the 24% tax bracket. And what's really neat about what I'm able to do is I don't give tax advice, but going back to I do have to know what the tax numbers are. How do I do that? Well, I use my professional partners to give me these lovely charts. So if you're married, filing jointly to be in the 24% tax bracket, you're making between $190,000 and $364,000. So this is actually the 22% tax bracket when I look at it. Now she did it for a 2022, we're now in 2023, so that's what I'm looking at. Anyway, when she starts looking at these, it's real simple when you start looking at your income, the standard deduction, and then how much tax you're that you've actually paid based on what you've already done. So that's the standard deduction, that's how much is going to be owed. So when she actually did work with an individual and the market went down, this young lady said, well, I've got all this money in the stock market and I'm watching it go down and I'm done with that. She took everything out of the market. As soon as she did that, she took it out of the tax deferred umbrella, because we all have 3 buckets of money. You have your taxable, those are your bank accounts, maybe your brokerage account or something like that, because you paid tax on it. As you deposit your check into the bank, you pay tax on that money. And then if you get growth on that money in the bank, which is probably going to be pretty minimal, but you still will have capital gains, that's your taxable now. Then there's the tax deferred, that's your 401ks, that's your traditional IRAs. That means you're not going to get taxed on it now, but when you go to take it out, you're going to get taxed on it later. And then there's the tax-free. There's only a couple of tax-free options that we as working class Americans have available to us, and I make sure people understand what those are. But this young lady was absolutely done with the market and said, I'm taking all my money out. What she did is she automatically added $500,000 to her taxable income. So she went from a 22% tax bracket to a 37% tax bracket overnight. And then, because the government has special things for anybody that makes over $250,000, throw another 3.8% tax on top of that. So now she's well over 40% of everything that she got as income. That's almost half of her money going to Uncle Sam. It's all about strategy and understanding, working with the professionals. And because she didn't work with the tax professional, and it was already done. Once you hit December 31st or even April, whatever, depending on what the deadline is that the government has set, and your tax professionals know what those deadlines are, it's done. It's a done deal. There's nothing you can do about it. Now, there's something else that I want people to know, and does anybody have any questions on this?
He ended up with a tax due
Yeah.
because she took out the $500,000, went into a higher tax bracket. She ended up with a tax bill of $97,839
that she had to pay.
she had to pay.
And was that after they withheld something then?
Yeah, that's after
The
what they already
40%?
So remember, if she took money out of her IRA, they will have asked her, do you want to hold some money back? And if she said yeah, the standard's like 10%. But because she was in now over a 40% bracket, there was still 30+% tax that she needed to pay. Because she didn't pay enough, right?
Right.
And the government knows they've got their number crunchers. They're trying to get every dime they can because we saw the bind they're in.
Okay.
And then we kind of wonder, well, why do they need 50,000 IRS agents? Well, 30,000 are retiring, but they're going to bring on another 20,000, right? So it's a little bit of attrition there, but there's also, we need to get every dime we possibly can. So thank you for pointing that out, Tricia. So there was another situation that Sandra brought up, and the situation was about a rancher farmer. Now we're in southern Colorado and we've got quite a few of those folks around. I know up in West Cliff, I work with a lot of ranchers up there. And you've got livestock, you've got the weather, you've got the value of the dollar, all these different things that you have to think about when you're dealing with livestock or crops, and they're basically commodities is what they call them in my world. But this gentleman actually had to go through an awful lot of problems and had a drought, lost money on his stuff, so he had a negative income of $60,000. Plus he got the standard deduction of $25,900. So he owed zero tax because he's in the negative. And when you put it all together, he's in the negative $85,900. Well, this gentleman had a large 401k/IRA. It was an IRA because he was a rancher. They didn't have a 401k. But he had an IRA. So what the tax professional did is said, hey, listen, you have negative income of $85,900. You have $400,000 in your traditional IRA. Let's go ahead and take out $85,900 and put it into a Roth. That is one of the tax-free vehicles that you can get. And he still paid zero on taxes because it was a wash. This is again understanding how to use what's out there. When I go into the tax-free and taxable and tax-deferred, I want people to understand tax-deferred means we're taking a seed, we're planting it, we're growing it, and now we've got 10 years and we're going to pay tax on the 10 years. Or if we go into a Roth, we have a seed, we're going to pay tax on that seed, and then as it plants and grows, all of it's ours. So my question always becomes, and what I put in my book, do we want to pay tax on the seed or do we want to pay tax on the harvest? We know the government, because they help build these systems, would prefer that we pay tax on the harvest. Because as we start looking at the numbers, are taxes going down or are they going up? What's your gut tell you? I see in the back row somebody doing this.
What is that?
And what they told us as we were younger, when we were you guys' age, put your money in the IRA and the 401k now, because when you're old, you'll pay less taxes. And that has not come true. Not at all. Is there any questions at this point? This is what I call the power of zero. That's truly what that film is all about, is understanding what's going on and then how to put yourself in a 0% tax bracket. Because if they raise the taxes again, it's 47%. If we are in a 0% tax bracket, 0 times 47 is still 0. Any questions? Okay. No. So, I want to go into my goals point to the star. Now, I did choose a star, and there's 5 points on this star. But I chose the star because I'm ex-Navy and ex-Coast Guard. So I've sailed the oceans. And mankind has actually been navigating this planet by the stars. And what I'm trying to get people to do is become that financial star, to be that beacon for people coming behind you, to be that example, somebody that they can follow because you're getting educated, financial education. The working class American has been put into a position with our retirement, and we're the least educated on it. It's one of the most important points of our lives. It's when we're done working and now we want to be able to survive, yet we knew how to do our job really well. We knew how to be part of the process. We went to work, we paid our taxes, we did our jobs really well. And then at some point, we don't want to or we can't work anymore. So this is getting into understanding what goals are. Does anybody understand the difference between goals and dreams? We wake up from dreams. I don't mind you dreaming, but make sure that that dream becomes a goal, because it's that passion that's going to help you achieve your goals. We'll wake up from dreams. So here's what I call my umbrella drawing, because as we go in retirement, we're saving for that rainy day. So this is that tax-deferred bucket. You can have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, cash, annuities, which are an insurance product, and you can have the same thing over under the Roth. Here, we're deferring the tax. Over here, we're going to pay tax on it now. They do have what's called a 5-year rule on conversions. So when this guy converted $85,900, $85,900 would be available to him, but for 5 years he can't touch the growth. If he touches the growth all of a sudden will fall back under the traditional IRA rules. And the rules are starting to, what I have in the middle. And the rules are the same for both. So they do have what's called contribution limits. And contribution limits in 2023, if you are under the age of 50, you can put away $6,500. $6,500. If you're over 50, in a traditional IRA, you can put in $7,500. If you have a 401k or a 403b or 457b, you can put, if you're under 50, $22,500 under this or under this. Now you can split those up. The $6,500 in a traditional IRA, you can put some over there and some over here. You can put all there, or you can put all here, but the maximum contribution limit that the government will not allow you to put any more, or they will penalize you, they limit to what you can put in there. And then if you're over 50, they allow you to throw in an additional $7,500 on top of the $22,500 in the 401k type plans. Most of us can't put in that kind of money because we still have to make our money and spend our money to live, but I still want people to understand that money's just a tool. So distributions and penalties. If we try and take money out of the tax deferred umbrella before you're 59 and a half, you got to pay the taxes, whatever your current tax rate is, plus a 10% penalty, because the government says you're not old enough to be retired yet. After 59.5, it's just whatever your taxable income rate is. With a Roth, as long as you don't take out more than you put in and you've had it for 5 years, if you're under 59.5, you can touch the contributions without paying taxes. After 59.5, all of it is tax-free. And then they also have what's called the Secure Act. The Secure Act came out in 2019 and it was the biggest tax grab in history. It's where there were only 2 lawmakers that opposed it, and all the other lawmakers said, yes, we want it. What that did is it said, hey, we're going to raise the RMD limit from 70.5 to 72. Well, in 22, they actually raised it to 73. Okay, what is an RMD? It's a required minimum distribution. It's where the government says, hey, we let you put a whole bunch of money under there and we didn't tax you yet, but you're old. You're old and we want our money. And here's the funny thing about it too. I hear you laughing, but it's true. Yeah. They actually have a calculation and it's a life expectancy calculation. So what they'll do is they'll look at the amount of money on December 31st of your age 72 year, and then they'll say, okay, well, since you're going to be 73, the divisor is going to be 26.5. So if you have $500,000, you divide that by 26.5, and that's how much you have to take out. If you don't take that required minimum distribution by December 31st of your 73rd birthday, they can actually penalize you up to 25% of what you did not take. It used to be 50, but they changed that with the Secure Act and they've reduced it. And then they've got some other calculations that I am not really up to speed on, but that's where the tax professional comes in. If you are a non-spouse and you inherit a traditional IRA or a 401k, the Secure Act says that you have to deplete it in 10 years. You don't even have to do it every year, but on that 10th year, they're going to make you take everything. So if you're already in a high tax bracket, you're going to pay higher taxes on your income, plus you'll pay higher taxes on this because this adds to your income. It's understanding how things work. Yep. Now I'm going to move to the protection point, and I'm going to let Miss Trish get up here and talk a little bit more about protection. And I do have this, and that's to go forward if you need it. Okay.
Okay, I'm throwing a lot of information at you. And we're short on time. So, how many here have had to have an accident in their car? Had something happen in their house? And you called your insurance agent, right? And you had that security, that comfort of knowing that that was there. So when we get into our retirement, there are vehicles here that give you that protection of your money that's in your Roth or IRA. And just like we moved this one gal that moved 500,000 and she ended up paying the taxes, there are ways to move it without paying as much tax, or actually maybe zero tax. And you can do that and put it into some vehicles like a lifetime income retirement plan, which includes a life insurance or an annuity. And your life insurance can actually end up paying you into your retirement. The money grows and you get to get money off of that retirement. So that goes into your your lifetime income retirement plan. So those are things that you can look into and put in place for yourself, especially if you're young. Start paying into them now. It's not so much to do right now. When you're older like me, then it takes a lot more to get into something like that that's going to make your money work for you. So if you don't have those vehicles, then you want to maybe look into having those accounts that can actually make your money grow, and you get to live off that growth. And these vehicles also allow you to, when you're older, and you get infirm or need assistance at home, they pay for that. There's different things you can use that money for. And like Ron mentioned before, time. My dad always said things were a matter of time or money. And if you had the time to do it yourself, it didn't cost you much. But if you didn't have the time or the skills, you had to pay. And as you get older, you end up paying a lot more for those things that you need done because you don't have the time, you may have the time, but you don't have the skills or the energy to do now.
So what we like to look at is protecting life, health, and wealth. And how you can actually protect life. Life insurance is exactly what it is. If you die, somebody's going to get some money. But you know what? We don't always die. But we all will hopefully get older. And as we get older, I want you to think about protecting your health. Does anybody know what the 6 activities of daily living are? Here's how I remember them. When we wake up in the morning, we can transfer our own body. We can get out of bed by ourselves. Then once we're out of bed, we go to the bathroom all by ourselves. Then because we're going to get going, we bathe all by ourselves. The 4th thing we do is we do our toiletries, we brush our teeth, we comb our hair. We'll actually put on deodorant. When we put on makeup, we'll shave. Then we can dress ourselves, and then we can feed ourselves. If we can't do 2 of those 6 things, we are in a long-term care event, and we need help. And if you don't have somebody big and burly around the house that can pick you up and put you in a chair and bathe you and feed you and dress you, then we got to pay somebody to do it. And that's not always a good thing. One thing I want folks to know is we've got risks. Longevity risk today is greater than it ever has been before. When I was growing up, people were smoking and drinking, and man, it was go, go, go. Eat whatever you want. We are smarter now. We know what not to put in our bodies. Not that people still don't do it, but we're smarter on that. Statistically, 49% of people over 65 are going to need some kind of long-term care. And I'm sorry, ladies, you guys are more likely to need it than us men because we just usually die. And those are statistically what's going on. We have to think about legislative risk. Legislative risk is laws can change. Tax laws can change. And that's what we have to think about. What are we thinking about when we're protecting life, health, and wealth? Wealth to me is protecting it from taxes. A tax implication will kill something faster than even a down market. And that's why I bring up the numbers. What has history done? Well, history most likely repeats itself, and that's why I want people aware of what's going on. But longevity risk we talked about, and then market risk is another. There are products out there that can protect you from down markets. And that's something that I want folks to know. There are 4 tax quadrants. We as the employee and the small business owner, we pay the highest taxes. The government built the system that way. That's just how it is. We are the working class Americans, and that's where we are, and we will pay the highest tax. Big business, 500 employees or more, pay the least tax, and the investor actually pays the least of all. Well, how can you say that, Ron? Because when I look at what the long-term capital gains and qualified dividends rate is, if you are in the 22% tax bracket or lower, you will pay 0% tax on your gains. The highest tax rate on capital gains is 20%. Right now, the highest tax rate is 37%. Okay, now we're going to get into legacy. And here's where I'm going to give it over to Alicia.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Alicia Coltrip. I work at Banner & Bauer. I'm a partner. We're right down by Angelo's, just on the Riverwalk. Just briefly, what we do is try to do estate planning and probate administration to protect people and protect what you've built so you can leave a legacy for your family. Keep them out of court, out of conflict, and keep them from fighting over what you had when you're gone. We prepare 5 documents. We do a will. We do a memorandum, which is a personal property kind of distribution list. We do a medical power of attorney, a general power of attorney, and then an advance directive. Because as Ron was saying, it's not always about what happens when you pass away. We want to protect you if you are disabled, if you can't make decisions for yourself, if you can't continue to care for your property or your medical needs. We want you to be the one naming who's making those decisions for you. That's what a power of attorney does. It allows you to designate someone now while you're healthy who you want to speak for you if you can't. The will, I might get a lot of questions about wills versus trusts. I think that Google decided to promote revocable trusts to everybody, and so we have a lot of questions about that. If you only hear one thing from me today, don't pull something off the internet. Everybody is different. You need to speak with someone who understands you, your family, your property, how you got your property, what your goals are, who your kids are, what you're looking to do in the future, who needs extra protection. So what you're going to want to do is meet with someone who can tell you, what is the best thing for you? Do you want a trust that can manage your property for generations? Do you want a will that will just distribute to your heirs and pay your bills? What is going to be the best way to protect your legacy so that your kids and your family is not left fighting over your assets? I think that's the worst kind of legacy. It doesn't let people grieve, and it just leaves you in a combat situation for sometimes decades. This is a ton of information to throw at you. We went over it a little bit yesterday too. Have any of you served as a personal representative of an estate? Have you had to probate anyone's property? No. Do you have your own estate plan now? Has that been something you've ever prepared? Yes? Okay. How often do you revisit that?
Never. I never have. I think I've had it for 5 years now.
5 years is not bad. That's good. We've had people come in with 20-year-old, 40-year-old plans this week. Their kids are all grown. Everything looks very different when your kids are out of the house and you're not trying to plan for, what happens if your young child needs to be raised by someone else. But I would encourage you, if you want to protect your legacy, to get to the end of your life and know that your family won't be thrown into conflict, to come and do an estate plan and protect what you're leaving.
Can you talk a little bit more, because I know you brought it up on Tuesday, about who can legally, if your estate goes into probate, who can legally become representative?
So if you don't have an estate plan, Colorado is going to tell you what will happen. Anyone can apply to be personal representative of your estate. Family has priority, a spouse or children have priority. But if no one steps up, a creditor can apply. So if you have a mortgage, if you have a credit card, if you have a vehicle loan, that creditor can apply to the court and ask the court to appoint them personal representative. And the minute they're appointed personal representative, they can sell your house. They can claim your bank accounts. They can take your vehicles. They can take things away from your family to pay their own debt, and then they will pay themselves to administer the estate as well. So imagine a $1,000 Visa bill, and Visa comes in and sells your home, and then pays themselves $25,000 on top of that for managing the estate. If you leave your family without a plan, the biggest thing we see is the conflict. Just the stress of not knowing and leaving people in limbo and then fighting over who's going to take care of what. But the risks are very real as far as who could come in and manage that for you.
Does anybody have any questions for Alicia? I mean, this is why we want professionals in the industry coming in, because it's this kind of information, it's real world stuff. Because, as much as we don't like talking about it, we're all heading that way, right? I would rather have a say in what's going to happen versus let Colorado or a creditor, for God's sakes, make it happen that way. And the creditor thing I didn't know, so I really appreciate you sharing that.
I do have just a quick question for a single parent that has a small child. If something were to happen to that parent, is just a will, or what's the best? The father is not involved,
so you can sometimes designate a guardian in your will, say who you want to care for the child. You can set out a will, a trust within a will, or set up a standalone trust that allows you to prioritize, how do you want the guardian to spend your money for your child? Do you prioritize travel, education, medical expenses? Do you want them to have money to start a business? What is your goal for your child, and how can you protect them? So Colorado won't let you give a minor a lump sum inheritance. They will set up a trust. There's a Universal Trust Act that will protect that child from receiving. But I have 5 kids, I would rather have a say. I would rather say, this is what I want this spent on, please prioritize this, don't let my 18-year-old buy a Ferrari. Yeah. No, please do this, let's be careful, my 18-year-old, 21 now. We want to be able to say what happens to these kids, who I would prioritize, for example, letting my children visit my family, you know, travel to see their relatives, things like that, travel for education, something like that. But it lets a trust within a will or standalone will let you determine and prioritize that and protect your child.
Like even protect the child from a father that's never been in the picture. Is that the same type of thing?
Yes and no. That's much more complicated. So we could talk about how to do that and what protections to put in. One thing a lot of people are concerned about is how to protect that ex relationship from having a say in the money. And so if you designate a different trustee, then that person, your old relationship, the child's father will not have a say in how the money is spent, which can change everything too. So yeah, that's a lot of people also come in looking at how do I protect my child from a potential divorce or my child's creditor, and that might be another situation where a trust is the right fit because you can say this money goes to my child and my grandchildren, not to my child's spouse, not to any marital asset that could be divided in a divorce. So sorry to take all the
No, there was one.
I'm sorry. But shifting gears to the other end of the spectrum here, isn't there a way of getting your assets once you're in retirement and stuff, like specifically the house, put in the name of your children so that it avoids that probate kind of thing from happening to them? I don't know.
You can. Probate is required in Colorado when you have real property, when you have real estate. There has to be someone appointed by the court to sign the paperwork, to sign the deed. If you transfer your property to your children before you die,
right.
My concern is I always tell clients, well then they have to sign any sale paperwork. If you change your mind, if you need assets, they're the owners. They have to sell that house for you. It can also trigger a gift tax. You've got to file a gift tax receipt. You also could lose the step up in basis. And so another consideration is when you pass away, the date of death value of your house is what is looked at for capital gains purposes. So if you bought your house at $100,000, you sell it, and the market has it at $400,000. There's $300,000 of assets, that equity. Zero tax if it's been an estate. So if it's still in your name, your heirs aren't going to pay any taxes on that $300,000 gain. If you've given it to them 10 years before, they lose all of them.
Oh,
so a lot of considerations. That's why it's always very specific.
And I think one of the best things, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Alicia, is a beneficiary deed.
So those, sometimes they can disqualify you for government benefits though. So again,
depending on the situation.
Be very, very careful about those.
Okay, very good. So what she was talking about step up is, when you inherit a brokerage account or even a bank account, you get the step up basis is what they call it. So when you buy into something, that's called your cost basis. And if all of a sudden the value is grown, like she's talking about with property, now you have a new cost basis up here on the date of your passing. If you have things set correctly, then it goes straight to the children, and that's their cost basis, not down here somewhere, where if they do sell the asset, they're having to pay tax on it, going back to this tax picture. And this, again, working with professionals and helping you understand how to navigate these murky waters that we live in today.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that being said, we'll wrap things up, but at Peaks Integrity, we believe that legacy is not just the legal documents. Absolutely, you've got to have them. You've got to have that team member. But it's what are we teaching our children? Think about what we got taught as we were growing up. Hey man, just go to work hard, and put your money in the bank and save it. But that's not really a good way of looking at things anymore. We can put our money in the bank in that taxable bucket. And I don't know if you guys know this, but for every $100 that gets deposited, the bank gets to loan out $1,000. Do you realize that? And people wonder why the banks are in trouble. Because they get to do that. They get a 10x the money that we deposit. Because we're depositors. We're actually investing in the banks. And then the banks leverage that money. And I'm trying to get people's head around understanding that.
It's over there.
I know. But what I'm trying to do is get people to take that responsibility onto ourselves. If we can control our own destiny, if we understand that money is just a tool, if we become our own financial star and be the example for people, it doesn't matter what the people in Washington do. If we are controlling it and we're working with professionals and putting us in the situations it's going to help us because we're educated on money. Because how many people have gone to school and learned about money? They had a class on money. No, they don't. That's why I'm trying to teach what I can. Again, I'm Ron Beckner. I am the author of Blueprint and Financial Guide for the Working Class American. Thank you for coming.